Hi, hope you're having a good day. I wanted to talk to you today about citrus trees. We live in Zone 9B in Northern California, and so we are fortunate to be able to grow citrus in the ground here. Let me show you. Right over here, this is it's a very young Mandarin Grove. I actually started planting trees 3 years ago. We bought our property 3.5 years ago. It'll be 4 years in May. The very first tree that I planted, actually on my birthday, was a Meyer lemon tree over behind our bedroom. Since then, we have slowly added different citrus trees because citrus is a huge favorite for our family. These trees we have had mixed success with, and that's one thing I actually wanted to talk to you guys about and kind of give you our experience with citrus, the good and the bad, and see if citrus might be something that works for you. The first one I want to show you is our Satsuma Mandarin. It is under here. It is alive. Let's see if we can get it for you. It is green, but we cover it up with this frost blanket. It's actually called a frost bag I got off Amazon to protect it from the low temperatures while it is just a couple years old. We've had this one in the ground for 3 years. Now over here, this is our very first clementine that we planted. It also looks pretty beautiful under there. Unfortunately, these didn't get any fruit this year because we had a late freeze late April, and it killed the blossoms and the little fruit. But those bags are wonderful. They're off Amazon. We have tried Christmas lights to keep them warm. The bags feel like they're a lot easier, use less electricity, and just reliable for us. We have added different mandarins since then. Here, and these. Now, we've definitely had mixed success, and I want to talk about that part with you. We have a garden sensor, and we dipped down to 30.7. So we definitely need protection for young citrus. I have a neighbor who says that citrus will not live here. I have a friend that lives just a little bit down the highway that says citrus won't live here. What do I mean by here? I mean our little microclimate over outside of town. It seems to be a little bit colder at night, but we have done really well with these frost covers. So I feel like once we get them established, they're going to be fine. I grew up with citrus. I grew up with a huge grapefruit tree right outside my mom and dad's home. And I just love mandarins. So we have the 8 mandarins here, one in a pot out front. I'm going to show you those pots. They are my insurance policy. One other thing I wanted to mention that you probably noticed is we have heavily wood chipped. I mean, this goes down really, really far. And the reason for that, it still goes down. There's a couple reasons for that. One, it acts as an insulator for the tree. 2, it helps with water retention in our hot summers. And 3, it'll amend our clay soil over time to make it just healthier. So you see we have tons and tons and tons of wood chips. We add them in the summer, and we add another layer again in the winter. Not only do we have to protect our trees from frost, we live where it's really hot, and we actually have to think about the heat and think about the drought because we've had limited water. So the wood chips help so much with both keeping the trees warm and keeping them hydrated because the water doesn't evaporate as fast and it holds it there, it holds it in. We don't have to water as often, which helps so very much, so much. Now where we live, Citrus does really well planted in the ground once it's established. There are a lot of people like my mom and my grandma who have 40, 50-year-old citrus trees like grapefruits, Meyer lemons, oranges that produce great every single year, and they're huge, and you don't have as much of a worry about frost because they're mature. When they're young, that's the greatest danger for us. When it dips into freezing temperatures, which we are not as cold as some areas, I wouldn't necessarily recommend growing citrus in a lot of zones. But here, if you get them to a mature place, I would say, I don't know, 6, 7, 8, 9 years in the ground, you're going to be okay and not so worried about putting frost blankets on unless you have a tree full of fruit. And at that point, you might be more concerned if the fruit freezes than the actual tree. Behind me, you see what I call my insurance policy. We have had a lot of citrus die. We have learned the hard way what not to do with growing citrus. One thing not to do is you don't want to plant them straight into alkaline clay soil without amending it. Citrus love acidic soil. And so even the fertilizers you use are more likely to be acidic. But overly alkaline clay makes it so the citrus have a hard time taking iron up. And it can cause a yellowing of the leaves that basically it's like they're anemic, like a human can get anemic. And so it's really important when you first plant citrus, if you're going to plant in the ground, you want to know if your soil is, if it's clay, if it's more alkaline, you want to know that kind of stuff so you can do something to amend it. And I have a friend who had a beautiful Mandarin Grove just about 15 miles from us, a little south of us. And he said his trick was to put aged chicken manure into the hole every time he planted his mandarins. And he had very, very fruitful mandarins. He planted into clay soil and they did just fine. So that's something also to think of, is they like high nitrogen. Chicken manure is very high nitrogen. We had one tree that was struggling and being kind of yellow. We'd done a lot of the iron treatments. And what we decided to do was to give it blood meal. And blood meal is very high nitrogen. And it greened up for us. And it actually started bouncing back when we weren't sure how it was going to do. So you definitely want acidic. You want high nitrogen. You want to protect them from frost when they're really young. And then here, this is something that maybe if you're in a different zone, but even in our zone, it is a great insurance policy. You can grow them in pots. To try to show you how big these pots are, they're pretty large, right? I have an orange, a grapefruit, a mandarin, a Meyer lemon. Actually, I think I have 2 oranges, and I have a little lime tree. Lime is the absolute most sensitive to frost of all of these different citrus varieties. So we killed 2 limes that were planted in the ground, even with frost bags, even with Christmas lights. We tried all the tricks everyone says. But look at this lime. I got to show you this. This lime is amazing. I didn't even cover it during the cold. Look, this lime right here, it's a bear's lime. And look at how beautiful and happy it looks. Completely uncovered. As I said, last night we got down to 30.7. And the trick, I think, is having it in a big pot next to the wall of the house. I have these trees, my insurance trees, under the eaves next to the wall. Why would being next to the wall of a house matter, or being under the eaves? Well, your house actually has heat that it's holding, and heat tries to escape. Even with really well insulated homes, heat is always trying to escape your home a little bit. And so you are giving a little boost of heat to your trees. I was talking to a friend earlier today. We were talking about citrus trees, and she was asking if she should plant in a pot or in the ground. And she's local, so she could do either way. I was telling her, when you drive through the more established neighborhoods in our area, in town, a lot of them have very mature citrus planted in the ground next to the house. I think that helped the citrus. It protected them from wind, and it gave them that little extra protection from frost with the heat of the home. We didn't have a good wall of our house to do that, but if we lived in a different place, a different property, that is something I would definitely consider doing myself. This is a little Valencia orange I have. It's pretty small. I've got it in a big pot. It's got a lot of room to grow. You know, I love oranges. I love limes. I love lemons. I love mandarins. I actually love grapefruit. One thing I was thinking about having these citrus in pots is, if need be, I could always bring them inside. We don't really get cold enough that I think the house wouldn't warm them, the eaves wouldn't protect them from frost, but that is always an option when you have your citrus in pots. I think it's also another way, if you want to keep your citrus more dwarf size, have a little bit more control on how tall they get, because their roots can't quite spread as far. Now, you definitely need a big pot, and you do need to amend the soil more when it's in a pot, because nutrients can get depleted. Just seeing how big that pot is. And by the way, that's not a citrus. That's a little peony, but you definitely need to mend your soil. We still put blood meal in these. We put good compost. We fed them with worm castings. We actually made a soil mix using an acid-loving plant soil mix. And then we actually amended that as well with some perlite, which are the little white parts for good drainage since it is potted. We also added vermiculite for water retention because we live where it is incredibly hot. And here's a downfall of pots. Pots will dry out faster than the ground, where the roots can go down trying to search for water. So you do need to make sure, if you don't have your pots on drip, you have regular water to them, that you're able to check their dampness regularly, and you don't let them get behind. All right, the amount and type of citrus we have goes like this. We have 2 Meyer lemon trees, one in the ground that we planted the weekend that we got our house, and the other in a pot. We have 1 Bear's lime. We have 2 Valencia orange, both of those are in a pot. We have a grapefruit that is also potted. Then we have 1 clementine mandarin that is potted. Added to those, we have 8 other mandarins over in my Mandarin Grove. And those are a combination of satsuma and of clementine. Satsuma are such a delicious flavor, but they will bear fruit later than clementine. So you're going to get an earlier harvest, a quicker bang for your buck planting clementine, but I like to have the couple different varieties. I also just wanted to encourage you, if you kill citrus trees, I have killed so many citrus trees. I have killed 2 citrus trees at our first house. I tried to plant a Meyer lemon. I have killed 2 lime trees at this house. I believe I've killed a loquat tree at this house. I have killed, I want to say, 2 different orange trees and 6 mandarin or something like that. So for every tree you see thriving, I probably have killed a tree to equal that. So don't give up. If you can't make it work, research, talk to people in your area, and again, consider potted ones. If you're in a zone colder than us, it could work to bring it inside, to put it in a heated greenhouse. There's lots of ways to try to make it work, but you know, super fun when it works out to grow it yourself. It'll be years before we really have the harvest that I desire. I know some trees that are 40 years old, 50 years old, that produce hundreds of fruit on just one tree. So I'm patient, I'm waiting. I can't wait till we have the bounty, but until then, I'm gonna pick my 5 mandarins off my potted tree and enjoy them because they are so sweet, so wonderful, and it's so special to grow something at home.